The other piece is that, is that a zero?
No, it's a capital O.
Capital O. So the other piece, so each talk. Each talk is, each talk is just a Google form, and for each person, and if your name's not on there, I'll add you, but I'll add it before you come up or when you come up, so it's there. You're going to score each person's talk 1 to 5, like one star to 5 stars, and you can go back and change how you rated that talk, how you didn't, and until the final end, after everybody's done it, then we'll hit submit, and what? Oh, we want to come in and say,
great opportunity.
It is a great opportunity to introduce our new Director of Professional Development. Edie, if you guys don't know her, since this is our secondary group, was principal at Pond Springs for
9 years.
9 years.
Nice to meet all of you. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to. Really hard. We should go in. I'm good. We should go in.
Listen to Mark.
For the enhanced
So each talk 1 to 5, and then at the end we'll hit submit, and top cumulative score wins a copy of Day 3 keynoter Tim Ferriss's book Tools of Titans. And that person also is going to have the opportunity to gift the second copy to somebody that didn't get to go. Like somebody who feel they would have really benefited from some of the learning or has really been stepping out and doing something exciting. So not only will you win a book, but you get to give a book as well. 0 to 5 minutes. Any other questions before we jump in?
There may be some people who didn't make the slide.
Yeah, you don't need a slide.
But okay, but she's not on the form.
Okay.
Me? Oh, I have a presentation.
Okay, slides are optional.
Okay.
You don't need them. You can get up and bring in. I saw some people brought in plants. I don't know if that's part of. Is that part of your?
It's spring break.
Red kale.
Red kale. That's a metaphor for something else. All right, so I will go first, and I remember probably 4 years ago I went to the my first South by Southwest EDU, and was really where I got introduced. I think there was one session that had to do with design thinking out of all 300. Just the idea of that just really changed the kind of the whole way I looked at the professional development department, kind of the way I looked at operating kind of as a human going forward from there. And I could not be more excited, though, that over these 4 years, I mean, how many design thinking type sessions were there this last week? It seemed like everyone had some element of that into it. And I just couldn't be more excited. This is one I wanted to share. It's from Innovators Compass. And it's really just kind of a life operating system. They talk about it in terms of leading change initiatives and things like that. But just always keeping people at the center, that everything we do is designing an experience. You know, whether it's designing this building, designing a training for somebody, looking at our workspaces, things like that. Everything's an experience. Textbooks, the way we interact with them, your work on campus, you're designing for those people. And looking at kind of that compass, I just thought this was a great way to, great thing to share. I wanted to share it because it's just one more way to look at ourselves as designers and the way that we can interact and keep people focused, be human-centered. And so just more, you can click on this and take it to Innovators Compass. It's nothing that different than the other design thinking stuff, just another way to look at it. All right. So next up.
I like the slide, yeah. I'm Amy Grosso. I'm the grant coordinator for the district. And just a little background. My background is not education. My master's and PhD are in counseling and counselor education, so I come from a counseling perspective. But wanted to come into K-12. My whole family's been in it, and it's what I really believe in. I have a strong stance and background on social justice, and so my mind is always there. I think with that, and Brene Brown's talk encouraged me to be more vulnerable about some of these things that I think I've always been at a deficiency because I didn't come from education. You know, I see myself as not up to speed because of what all of our teachers do, what all of you do, that's not my background. And through South by Southwest EDU this week, I saw more of where my role might be because some words just keep coming to my mind. Trauma, shame, and pain were themes throughout a lot of the keynotes. And the idea of those things that students come with and how we inflict that on students throughout their education. And we inflict it on students because we don't let them be who they are. You know, the whole idea that we have a square box and nobody is square that comes to our school, but yet we keep trying to shove them in there. We keep trying to shove ourselves in it too, I think, as educators and as leaders. And so on the other side, it wasn't all dark and gloomy. That the positive things that kept coming to my mind was unlearn, listen, and to be brave. And unlearn, like, how do we have to unlearn how we've always done things? How we were conditioned from the way we were educated? How do we have to unlearn biases that we have or some of our thinking so that we can help students and ourselves stay away from trauma, shame, and pain? And I really think that comes through listening. We have to listen to ourselves first. We have to listen to students, and we have to listen to each other so that we can move past that. And I think it takes extreme bravery for us as individuals and us as a district to do this, because I think so often when we talk about innovation, I asked the other day in a meeting, like, what does that even mean? That I think sometimes when we think of innovation, that we think it has to include a laptop, it has to include an iPad, but sometimes I think we can be really innovative by just meeting students where they are and listening more to those emotional needs that they have that are the basis, I think, for anything we do. And so I love Brene Brown's quote of the revolution will not be televised, it will be in the classroom. And I just think about how much our society right now needs civility and empathy and so many of the things that we have the potential to help students with by modeling it and just allowing them to express those things within their education. So it was a great experience for me. I'd never been before, and it was definitely, someone stated it was a thinking conference. It was. You didn't learn how to do anything, but you really had to question things deep down. So that's what I learned.
Who's next?
Yay!
Hi. Can you take the lights?
Sure.
Oh, wow.
This the presentation that I got to see was really about listening, and so I don't want to. Patrick.
Graduation several years ago, my high school English teacher threatened to replace me on the program or cut my microphone. She found out that I was interested in doing a poem as part of my remarks. So I am eternally grateful for being able to share this piece of myself, my most authentic voice with you this afternoon. At the time of his remarks, I couldn't read, I couldn't write. Any attempt to do so punished by death. For generations, we have known of knowledge's infinite power, yet somehow you've never questioned the keeper of the keys, the guardians of information. Unfortunately, I've seen more dividing and conquering in this order of operations, a heinous miscalculation of reality. For some, the only difference between a classroom and a plantation is time. How many times must we be made to feel like quotas, like tokens and coined phrases, diversity, inclusion? There are days I see them. Beneath their masks and their mischief exists an authentic frustration and enslavement to your standardized assessments. At the core, none of us were meant to be common. We were born to be comets, darting across space and time, leaving our mark as we crash into everything. A crater is a reminder that something amazing happened right here, an indelible impact that shook And injustice is telling them they are stars without acknowledging the night that surrounds them. Injustice is telling them education is the key, while you continue to change the locks. Education is no equalizer. Rather, it is the sleep that precedes the American dream. So wake up, lift your voices until you patch every hole in a child's broken sky. Wake up, every child, so they know of their celestial potential. I've been the black hole in a classroom for far too long, absorbing everything without allowing my life to escape. But those days are done. I belong among the stars, and so do you. So do they. Together, we can inspire galaxies of greatness for generations to come. So no, sky is not the limit. It is only the beginning. Lift off.
Best thing about creating that presentation was getting to watch that speech multiple times. Fun thing to know is he's going to publish the spoken word version with a little bit of edits
For graduates in May. So if you know people who are graduating, and that would be something for them to inspire them and move forward. It is a really cool little pamphlet.
If anybody has any connections, also we're trying to get him to pick off.
I do.
Oh, nice.
He's at UNCG doing his PhD, and that's where I graduated.
And he's really quick to respond on Twitter.
Yeah, he saw. I didn't even tweet to him, just Alice. I was like, "Oh, I went to UNCG," and he's like, "Oh." So yeah, I'll be there next week.
Think that works?
Really well.
Yeah.
We should reach
I'll
out.
make Dr. Florence very happy.
That would make that.
I'm waiting for what convocation?
See what works. August 15th.
Tell me the dates. I'll see if I can meet with him next week.
All right, thank you. Karen, you're up there.
All right. What I want you guys to do for just a second is to think about a time as you were a student, whether it could be elementary school through college. What is your most vivid memory as a student? It can be something from peer to peer, student to teacher, something where you were vulnerable, something that was humorous, shameful, guilt. Think about that time. Find a partner at your table and share your story. Share it in a one active movie type scene with a beginning and an end. 1 minute.
I remember in first grade, we had our third one.
So I'm remembering, so yeah, there's lots of stuff.
Do you have a minute?
I remember.
You got spanked?
So we had
Oh, wow. I think I remember, they said tell us. I'm backstage, and I see older, I was in high school, I see people that have been in the theater program in high school that are older than me, doing all these weird crap things. They were performing on stage, and I realized doing something, I got to go on stage, and some people were like amazing, and other people like go on stage and perform.
I like to be creative, and I'm very little technical ability.
Going through my lines. Then once I was ready and I was there, I stepped on stage, and just something for me, I felt like this is it. I just went, did my whole, it felt so empowering. It was just something about that big stage that took me to a different level in high school. And then I think that helped me. So
We're going to talk for 5 minutes. I love how you took all of the different strands of the same thing. Yeah.
All right, finish up your stories.
My next door neighbor who's an art teacher, they go to Kansas, and she's leaving home for like it's really cool because so it was my turn to teach the art project or whatever, and I started working on it. She like mentioned me.
Hopefully you both got a chance to share. I know we don't have a ton of time, so one of you might have shared and listened. So as you can imagine from my very quiet and shy nature, doing a lightning talk was not in my comfort zone. Having it televised was not in my comfort zone. But what I learned from Brene Brown yesterday is that courage comes from vulnerability. And it was something that I took as I listened to everybody, and you can read through these quotes from all the different presenters that I went to, and it ties in with what we've been talking about too, is that we have to give our students a choice or a chance to be courageous. We have to foster this environment of a courageous classroom and allow our teachers to create that as well. Because being vulnerable comes courage. And the other thing that I loved is being able for the kids to tell their story. And like we heard before, giving those kids a chance to tell their story with no judgment, getting to know who they are, and fostering that with empathy and with relationship building and courage and vulnerability.
Can I ask a question really quick? Because something's gonna happen in that you're gonna ask me to rate 1 to 5, like per talk, and then like the person that just went, and I don't remember. Like, so are these being collected somewhere? Do we hand these in?
It's on the Google.
Okay. Submit on what?
Go to that.
Never mind. Sorry.
Andrea,
And
take
the
a
mic. Hey, Andrea.
So as I went on this 4-day journey through South by Southwest EDU, all the things that I chose had a human-centered thread through them. I took wonderful notes, 15 pages, if you would like to see them. Very detailed, you can relive the moment. And this was my Bible, and Margaret's too, I think. So went through here, looking at everything, trying to find our place where we were going. And all the panels, all the workshops, all the sessions that I went to, each one of those people inspired me. I was moved to tears, to happiness, to joyfulness, moved to write a piece of performance poetry that I will do for you now. And it is dedicated to my own wonderfully creative children who I wish to have a very creative experience at school. We must break the bonds that confine us. Release that fire inside, that passion that burns deep in our soul. Thrust out into this world. For me? No. For you? No. For us all. We are born unique and fragile into a harshness of world. We must clothe ourselves anew with a real, authentic brilliance, which blinds the unbelievers. Transform so that they may see and share in the joy of humankind. No longer do we have the luxury to hide in fear. Our children demand us as their guides to listen, to be vulnerable, to hear, see, and feel as others do. Be an agent of change. Empower others as they have inspired us. To hope forward to be more than our past has afforded us. Exchange tradition for innovation. It is within each of us to create, to persevere, go forth, engage, and ignite.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't do performance poetry. But I am wearing antlers. So we have that. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit today about comfort zones and how to kind of expand learning and growth through being uncomfortable. So the keynotes that we went to, there were 3 of them in particular. The Brene Brown, who talked about being vulnerable, and that's where growth really happens. And then Tim Ferriss, who talked a lot about being setting yourself up for uncomfortable zones in your life so that you can kind of feel comfortable in those moments of discomfort. And then what was the other guy? Roberto Rivera. And he talked a lot about post-traumatic stress, but also post-traumatic growth, and how given the right circumstances, you can really turn trauma into growth, which I find quite fascinating. It also reminds me of the zone of proximal development that I know that we're all probably familiar with, but by really kind of setting kids up, the shadows freaking out. By setting kids up for being comfortable in those moments of discomfort, we can really kind of expand that learning opportunity for them, which I find quite fascinating. And I also think about myself, like public speaking is not really the first thing on my list of things to do, especially when it's televised. Thank you, Brian Smith. But by doing this, it is helping me to become more comfortable in those moments of discomfort. And then I did a little experiment, which is something that Tim Ferriss talked about. He wore like his party pants sometimes, and he said that by wearing his like crazy party pants, he was allowing himself to be not only vulnerable, but also like, okay, this is gonna make me feel weird, and people are gonna look at me weird, but I'm gonna go with it, and then I'll learn to be more comfortable in those moments. So I've been wearing these all day. Went to Starbucks, and the lady at the drive-thru just acted like she didn't even see him. Home with me, and I come into work, kids kind of look at me, and they just move along their way, and then I saw some of you guys in the office. Some of you just looked at me and were like, and just turned away, like, I'm gonna act like I don't see her. Some give like a kind of long look. Some were like, oh, look how cute, which I took as like, bless your heart. But some of you, I think, that are more comfortable with me really kind of ask like, it's not Christmas. What are the antlers about? Like cute but weird. What are you doing? So just to me, it was been kind of like a fun experiment to see for myself. Like I have gotten more comfortable with it as we walked to Hoodie's. Hoodie himself actually was like, cool antlers. And then as we were leaving, I saw like my shadow, and I thought, man, I know I look weird. But just this whole idea of being comfortable when you know that you're not going to be comfortable, and setting yourself up for opportunities for growth by putting yourself in situations that aren't comfortable is where we kind of grow. So just something to think about how we might be able to offer opportunities for our students and our children and ourselves for growth. So.
So Ryan talked about how there were a lot of sessions on design thinking. And if you don't know what design thinking is, it's human-centered problem solving, really, is what it is. But I'm going to tell you that design thinking, if you're not careful, is colonialism. So why is it colonialism? Because think about it. Design thinking, you are researching and getting to know a group different from yourself. And then you are taking it upon yourself to solve their problems without examining the biases in your own identity. And so it can be colonialism. So I went to a session where they do liberatory design thinking, and they added a couple extra steps to design thinking. And I thought it was really powerful. So the idea is that there's a space between equity and design where we can find an intersection and we can do more self-aware designing that's more inclusive and that inspires the shared design and construction for humanity. So the two steps that they added are notice and reflect. And so notice, that's the place where you look and examine your own identity and who you are and your biases before you even get started looking at the community that you're going to help. But you also look at power and how you're respectively positioned, and you look at the context of the situation. So you notice all of this before you even go to empathize and get to know the group that you're working with. You look for opportunities to collaborate and involve them in the process, because the community has the solutions more than we have the solutions. And then throughout the entire process, you take what they call equity pauses, where you reflect, again, on all of this stuff to make sure that there aren't any places where you are being the colonial, or I don't know. But so I have a quote here that is about equity pauses that I wanted to read to you that I thought was really powerful. So, a sense of urgency can mask hegemonic strategy. Our common discourse of urgency and business as usual creates little time for reflection. Our pace of life eclipses our awareness. Strategic equity pauses stop the clock to reflect on our language, ideas, and hunches in the context of a discourse of transformation. Without this moment to think, our brains default to the familiar and the known, making a repeat of past practice likely. Incorporating these discourse checks and pauses after each stage ensures that our ideas remain on the path of achieving equity. So I have all of this, and I would love to spend half a day doing this. I want to do it with our principals. It was amazing. I have these cards here that I got from them, and one of them is about the liberatory design process, and it has information. Another is on liberatory design mindsets. I don't even have time to get in that. So there's a whole group of mindsets that go along with this to help you through the design process. And then one of my favorite is our liberatory design do now. So these are a bunch of cards of small things you can do now to help set you on the process through liberatory design. So this was my favorite thing, and I really want to share it with all of you, and I'll pass these cards around. And if you want to talk to me more, come see me, and I'd love to share this. I also have these in PDF. Yes, okay, I will.
All right.
All right. Is it gross? It's not.
Is it gross? My Google form go. I got lost.
I know, right? I am gonna need this little piece of, so I couldn't see these when I was sitting over there, but does everyone know this? And I can erase it and use this little piece down here. Yes,
ma'am.
Swell. All right. So every time I get in front of a group, there's always seems to be so many more eyeballs than the heads when I'm in the back of the group. It's a little intimidating.
That's twice.
Anyways, here we go. This is going to be, we're going to be talking here. So first of all, does anyone know what is pictured here?
Bloodletting.
Yeah, right? So as you may or may not know, or probably as you do, this was the way of curing and treating illnesses for thousands of years. And go ahead and get that straight, thousands. When we talk about modern medicines and the advances of modern medicine, we're talking about a comparatively short period of time. When you look at this, you see, where's this from? Probably based on costuming.
Medieval.
Okay. What about here? Greek? What about here? Okay. What about here?
All right, Andrea.
Oh, that's a
That's America, yeah.
Andrea, you win. Good job.
When did this picture have to be taken after? After what?
1840.
Yeah, if your first pictures were taken in about 1814, that's about 1814, okay? So it's really not until relatively recently that we began to abandon this practice, right? And so how many of you guys have ever been bloodlet? Right? How many of you guys see that as a first line of defense? I'm gonna go get bloodlet. How many of you guys know anybody who's been bloodlet? All right? It's a practice that we would call pseudoscience at best, and at worst, we would call it cruel and probably lethal today, right? Say something to me.
Yeah.
It's lonely up here, guys. All right. So what I want you to do right now, knowing what you know, I want you to imagine that you're a patient in any of these time periods. Imagine that you're a patient in any of these time periods. And the current paradigm when you are ill is to go ahead and bloodlet you. All right? Let's assume, just for our budding horror novelists in the place here, that you actually know that this isn't going to work. All right? You actually have a modern understanding of medicine. You're just somehow transported back in time. You're sick. And your friend, the doctor, walks in with his handy set of tools. All right? Everybody got that picture in their head?
Getting freaked out here.
How are you going to tell him that this won't work? No, no, no. Answer me. How are you going to tell him that this won't work? No, but really think about it. Really think about it. This is the paradigm of the time. Like, this is how we make people better. And you and I know that it works because when you remove my blood, you lower my blood pressure, and I don't have the pressure to maintain the fever anymore. But how are you going to tell this practitioner that it doesn't work? Telling me you're not sick?
Prior patients.
Okay.
Have a different solution.
All right. I mean, from what I'm hearing from like great silences, there's not a good answer to that, is there? Say, you can agree with me.
Yes, ma'am.
There's not a good answer to that. Do you think you're really going to be able to say anything at this time period to convince this person that this practice doesn't work?
No.
Being a patient. Okay. So what happens if they go, or when, not if, but when they go ahead and bloodlet you, what happens if you get better? What did the practitioner say?
It worked.
Oh, look, it worked, right? What happens, and think about this one, I want more than one answer. Okay, what happens when the practitioner does his job, right, and you die?
Nothing. It was just too sick.
Nothing you can do.
It's his fault.
He's too sick, it was his fault, he came too late, what else?
Nothing could be done.
Nothing could be done, etc. Okay, so what you're really telling me there is that the outside evidence that you were seeking to provide didn't actually affect the paradigm, right? So what does affect a paradigm? So we have here what we call normal practice, right? And there's a period of time, maybe too long, that normal practice is in place. Can I get an amen? All right. And then, over a period of times, we get anomalies that lead to some form of crisis. After which time, there's a new paradigm. That eventually becomes the norm, right? Okay. So, what anomalies do you see currently within our system of education? What anomalies do you see currently within our system of education?
Successful dropouts.
I'm sorry?
Kids get behind, we never get them up.
Kids get behind, we never get them up. What?
Successful dropouts.
Successful dropouts, yes.
Kids not care. Well, I don't know if this is right. Kids not care. The reason the kids aren't successful is because they don't care.
Right, right. That's an answer to some of the anomalies that we see. Yes.
Graduating high school but can't read.
Graduating high school but can't read.
Passing the STAR test but failing their class.
Okay, or vice versa. Yeah. All right. So there's a whole bunch of anomalies that we currently see in education. And on this right now, if this were a timeline in and of itself, where would you say that we are? If this were a timeline in and of itself, the anomaly piece, where would you say that we are?
Yeah.
Right? We can cross our fingers and hope that we're approaching this point, right? Because that's how we go ahead and shift over to a new paradigm, right? So, can you imagine a day, all right? Because if we're pushing toward this, right? Can you imagine a day? Imagine what it looks like when you don't have the current paradigm. So think about that. Think about what a normal day would look like without the paradigm. Can you imagine what it would look like without the current paradigm? What are some of the things that you imagine when you are able to imagine something without the current paradigm? Anybody?
Student-led classes.
Student-led classes.
Student choice.
Student choice and learning. Anything else?
Kids not in grades, but just learning where they are.
Kids not in grades, but learning where they are.
Integrated grade levels.
Right, right.
Cross-curriculum, non-age choices.
And so sometimes some of us can fall into this, what this guy must be thinking of, what this guy must be thinking of, where we can be sometimes too close to the practice to really be able to see what the solutions are, right? I don't necessarily think that's any of us, all right? But some people can be too close to the practice to really see what any of the solutions would be. And so the question then comes, are we too adjusted to the current paradigm in order to be able to see what solutions lie outside of it? It's just a question, okay? Because paradigms were created, if we think about the paradigms of education today, a lot of them are created when our most marginalized populations were okay to be marginalized. Do you think about it? When it was totally okay to marginalize certain people, that's when a lot of the paradigms and structures that we utilize in education currently were created. And so is it any wonder that we still have that rampant marginalization, right? So if we think about it, we may be too close to really look at the solution, and kind of going back to what Amy was saying a minute ago, or at least what I was taking out of what Amy was saying. What about asking the patient? All right, so what about asking the patient? What about asking our kids and really getting legitimate feedback from them? Okay, so maybe it's time to start thinking about asking that patient, because it seems like with so many things that we do, we walk around on the inside of the box without ever actually getting inside of it. And it's really cool because we're close to the edges of the box, but we're still inside the box if you think about it. All right, so it's just food for thought, but maybe it's time to ask the patient.
Margaret, you want to go next?
All right. I have manipulatives-ish things. So I've got to separate you into groups of 4 because I was having some troubles with the copier. So I'll put a set. Please don't flip them over. Make sure I put yours in the right direction. So don't flip them over yet. So if you guys in the center tables can pick a side.
There's a comfort level where there's nothing.
Yeah. Sorry. So I didn't make a slide, but we'll just keep the blood stuff up because why not?
Yeah.
All right, so the session that I wanted to highlight was called, Are You a Neuro Teacher Yet? And interestingly enough, the themes from this talk kind of flow into this. So we're very data-based, right? We're examining data, we're talking about trends, but we're not always questioning our own thinking in relation to research. So on your tables, you have a set of cards, so please don't flip them over, and you guys are gonna have to join another group in just a second, one of these tables. I want you to read through them as a group, read through the fronts of the cards, and decide, is this neuro fact, is this neuro myth, true or false? Okay, so you have a minute and a half. Go next. About the facts about the brain, about the way that we learn.
You're born as smart as you are.
Strategic effort, we can see a lot of
I think it looks like last year's.
I thought you said you were not anyway.
Some people are kinesthetic learners, some auditory learners.
That's why.
Totally in the debate.
Thirty seconds.
What do you say?
Are we deciding on this iPad versus
All right, I'm gonna call you back for just a second. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. You guys are almost as good as 6th graders. You're so close. Okay, on your tables, you had a true and a false. Flip them over. Were you right or were you wrong? Take just a few seconds to discuss.
Yes. Team.
Gold star. I have stickers in my desk. Superhero ones. All right, so my takeaway from this session, there was a lot more to it, obviously, and there were a lot more cards. This was just as many as I could type before this happened. But the takeaway was that there's a lot of research out there, but we're not necessarily applying it to our practice. And I think that there's practice and there's research, and I think as a former teacher, I think I was always waiting for that book or that someone that would connect them. And these neuroscientists were saying that teachers have to live in that in-between space. We have to be able to make those choices for ourselves and to interpret, and also to question what are practices that we're doing that there's no research to say that works, and in some cases it might hurt.
Best bow ever. I just thought you were a furry and I didn't want to go there.
Not everything.
Daryl.
I didn't even question it.
I had to put it in.
You kept the yo. I'm so happy.
Okay, so the way that kind of splits my slide up is the kind of the grouping of learning that I did. So there was some individual learning I did throughout the week, some pieces that I learned with a partner, and then other pieces that I learned with a larger group. So the first one was the OER, which is Open Educational Resources. And one of the cool things I took from that, or that I learned from that, was the fact that it doesn't necessarily mean free, it just means free licensing. So you're pretty safe if you find anything in an OER database to share with other teachers or with students or anything else. So that was a really cool piece that I learned from that. Also, this particular see, here we go, Melissa. Simple terms, I'm forgetting. All right, so this particular resource, if you look it up, it's oercommons.org, is a place where you can start. And it's all contents, it's all grade levels. You just plug in the subject or the topic that you want to find out about, hit the search button, and it brings out all the open educational resources. But the particular session I went to here was trying to take it a step further and asking our students to actually be creators and curators of OER resources. So for me, that next step piece that we in education need to do. It's okay to find these resources on our own, but to actually have the students find them and vet them is an even more beneficial process for the students that are involved. The second one that I have, which is at the top, was a session called Your Privilege is Showing. And Allie and I went to this one in the afternoon on Wednesday. We were tired, but we were actually glad that we ended up going. And so it was basically a beta test of a card game that someone's trying to put out. And the idea behind it is that this is a vehicle to help you have those tough conversations that you don't typically have, especially in the world of education, about privilege, race, and sexism. And the reason why that kind of hits me is, I don't know, at least since I've been in the world of education, we have talked a lot about closing the gap between student groups. And I don't think that we can actually do that until we get serious and have some crucial conversations about our own misconceptions or the misunderstandings that we have about one another, and the privilege that we have that we don't necessarily know that we have. And that's even myself as a Black male, there's some privileges that I would have that other people would not. So that's really cool, kind of future things with that, and hopefully this doesn't go out to the founders. I'm gonna try to recreate the card game. So yeah, just so that, because it's going to be a while before it's packaged and sold. But I think it's something that our district would benefit from participating in, just to get the conversation started. And the last piece was personalized learning, and this kind of extends from what Melissa was talking about. In the sessions, I put a picture of some work that the group from Round Rock did with a student in that particular session, but I went to a number of them. And really the idea was bringing the voice of the student to the table when you're planning anything in education, not just the lessons that you're having, but the environment that you set up, what your class is gonna look like, what schedules are gonna be. So we had an opportunity to actually interview some students in this session, and from that we were able to design a day in the life of that student. We had an interesting student. She was really intrinsically motivated, but she was also an introvert at the same time. So you have those types of students, but you also have another group that had this very animated and boisterous student that like always wanted to be in the middle of things, but she also suffer from dyslexia. So the idea of, not getting so wrapped around choice for students that you forget their voice was a big piece of that one. So, I'm excited to start working on things like, and truly have personalized learning for students. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Anybody else that was there? Paul?
Can I share kind of a non-lightning form?
Sure.
All right. I just want to share my learning. This might not be learning anybody, but for me, but what was said and all these that are in common is that student voice was the main thing. So I went in there and there was nothing traditional. There's nothing about you were a lecturer going to campus saying, I'm going to get some lessons I could go take and use right away and dittos and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't that way at all. And so I was connecting constructivism to inquiry-based learning. So mine was on inquiry-based learning, but I want to read to you some of the attributes of inquiry-based and why it was in my mind saying this is the non-traditional constructivist. So let me review you on constructivism real quick. First, And I can be non-constructive. Like, if I was teaching limits, I would say, what is the first number x greater than 0? And I would let you lose sleep for about 2 months, trying to find the number that you can't divide by 2 and get closer. So I would just ask questions. Go to Niagara Falls, you get a cup of water, pull it out, and the motion stops. Why is that? Why does the motion stop when I say, shh, you take it out and you can't hear the glass of water? It was moving, and now it's a glass of water. So you tell stories, that's constructivism. But here's some of the stuff. Go from whole to part. Start with the big picture. And again, for me, the big picture of the whole South by Southwest was students have a voice and be humble enough to listen to them, put them on the table, and teachers have a voice. But as teachers, we need to listen to our students. Pursue student questions, constructivist learning, as opposed to strict adherence to the curriculum. We got to follow these papers. Rely on primary sources and manipulatives versus relying on textbooks and workbooks. And I think that's what economic curriculum. I don't just want to post traditional things when we're trying to construct a new way of teaching and learning, right? Students are the thinkers, constructivists. Students are blank slates, traditional learning. Teachers mediate and interact, constructivists. Teachers disseminate information, traditional. Teachers seek students' knowledge to make decisions. Teachers seek students' knowledge to make decisions versus teachers seek to correct and validate. So that was my constructive connection that was already in my brain. This was already on my head. I'm walking around saying, oh my gosh, these are constructive people here. These are thinking constructive people. I went into inquiry, and here's what inquiry says, and let's listen for the key word. There's going to be like 5. You tell me what word keeps on coming back. What is inquiry? Intentionally builds experiences to honor student ideas, questions, and wondering. Teachers create space for student ideas, questions, and wondering. To grow, utilize a wide range of curriculum materials like video, graphs, maps, images. I want to stop on that. I walked into a classroom once, and a history teacher wanted to do a writing on a war. And instead of just saying, write about the causes of the war, I walked in and I'm listening to Adagio for strings. And there's a picture of a black and white of a boat going into Normandy. And the question was, you're one of the soldiers, what are you going to write to your wife about what's going on? And I got a picture and I got music and a question. And he has like 5 different points of view for students to write from. They could pick one. They could pick, I'm on the boat going in and I'm so-and-so writing to so-and-so. I thought that was brilliant. That was constructivist. I got 2 more and I'll be done with my lightning talk. Students do the heavy lifting of learning, requiring development of questioning and investigating skills. When a school values inquiry, students become arbiters of their own learning experience. So what was the common word?
Students.
Students. And that's what I just got from the whole conference. That was my learning to connect to constructivism, to work on curriculum that is construction-based. But thank you for letting me.
All right. Did we miss anybody?
Ryan, can I say one last thing? This wasn't a part of my presentation, but I did put the picture as a reminder that if you have not seen the video that I posted in Basecamp, please make sure that you do. It was the best keynote I have seen in my life.
It was so good.
What's that?
I looked for it last night.
I'm sorry. I'm sad I missed that.
Come
All right.
refresh.
I just want to say that how impressed I was with everything you guys put together. I know it was short notice, and I want to thank you for stepping outside some of your comfort zones. And, I know we do want to always share our learning, so that's why we're broadcasting. We got 3 people watching.
Woo-hoo!
So thank you for watching. I don't know who they are, but I hope they're.
Are they in this room?
So what we're gonna do? We take 5 minutes. Make sure you put in your votes. Take a quick 5-minute break. We'll come back together. Somebody who knows how to write a formula in Excel, meet me over here.
Ryan.
And then so say 5 minutes. We'll come back here and then we'll wrap up.
We volunteer as